ingredients for our vanilla ice cream are whole milk, heavy whipping cream, pure vanilla extract or vanilla bean, granulated sugar, eggs, and a little bit of salt. The equipment to make our vanilla ice cream includes liquid and dry measuring cups, measuring spoons, a straight edge spatula, wooden spoon, rubber scraper, a ladle, a silicone whisk, and a wire whisk. We'll want a hand mixer, a fine mesh sieve, and some custard cups and an egg separator. We'll also need a small mixing bowl for the egg yolks and sugar mixture. The first thing I need to do before anything on the stovetop is to measure all of my ingredients and get everything ready to add to the recipe so that there's no waiting when we get to that step. And the first thing I'm going to start with is separating the eggs. So I have an egg separator. If you did not have an egg separator, you could use each half of the shell. So I've set it on a custard cup, and my recipe calls for 5 egg yolks. So I crack the egg into the separator. I let the white of the egg fall through, and I'm using this 4-cup liquid measuring cup for my small or medium mixing bowl for my egg yolks and sugar. So I'm going to just place the egg yolks in there. And you'll notice that I move the white of the yolk after each time that I crack the egg. And that's because I can freeze the whites and use them for another recipe later, as long as I get absolutely no egg yolk in the whites. Even one drop of egg yolk will mess up the whites to the point that they won't be able to achieve the volume necessary for recipes that just call for egg whites. So each time I move the whites over, and then I can just put it in a freezer bag that indicates how many egg whites are in the, so you see this one cracked. The yolk broke. So I would need to, before I continue separating eggs, I need to wash my egg separator so that no fat is transferred to the whites. And I'll have to either dispose of this egg, use it in a different recipe, or I could put it back in the refrigerator for a day and add it to scrambled eggs or some other dish. So now that I've cleaned up my egg separator, I can continue to separate my eggs. And so I'll do this next one to show you without a separator. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't have an egg separator, you can use the 2 halves of the egg. Still, you want to do it over a separate small bowl or custard cup. I just kind of move the egg yolk back and forth in the different halves of shell until there seems to be no more egg white. And then because my egg whites have no yolk, not even a drop, I can freeze those and they'll work in a variety of recipes. Now I'll measure my liquid ingredients, and I need 2 cups of whole milk and 2 cups of whipping cream. So I'll start with my whole milk, and I'm going to make sure my liquid measuring cup is on a level surface. I'll pour it in until I think it looks like it's 2 cups. And then I will move down to check that at eye level, ensuring that my view is in line with the mark I need. And then I add liquid or pour it back off as needed to adjust to the right line. And then since this recipe calls for 2 cups of whipping cream. And my whipping cream was purchased in a pint, and a pint is 2 cups. I don't have to measure the whipping cream. We'll just pour it straight into the pan when we're ready to add it. The next ingredient is the granulated sugar. The recipe calls for 1 cup divided, and that's divided in half. So rather than measuring 1 cup of sugar, I'm simply going to measure a half cup of sugar twice. I want to make sure that those lumps don't leave tracks where I'm missing sugar. So I'm going to heap it up and level it off. If any lumps create tunnels in the sugar, then I'm going to fix that, as you saw. So 1/2 cup of sugar goes right into the egg yolks. And the other 1/2 cup of sugar will go into a medium saucepan with my milk and cream. My recipe calls for 4.5 teaspoons of vanilla, and to really get the most out of this recipe, you want to use a pure vanilla extract. Since I know that there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, I'm going to measure a tablespoon so that it bubbles at the edge. Then I'll transfer it to the one that they'll all be in and wait till added to the recipe. And then a teaspoon. So that's 4 teaspoons. And then bubble at the edge, my 1/2 teaspoon. So you can see, to measure the liquid properly, it overflows the spoon a little bit. And since that was the only thing in there, I can pour most of that vanilla extract back into the bottle and save it for later. The only other ingredient I need is a pinch of sugar. So for that, I will literally take a pinch. It goes in at the same time as the sugar. So I'm just going to put those 2 items together until I'm ready to put them in the saucepan. Okay, so the recipe tells me to beat together the egg yolks and sugar until they become a light yellow color. So I can use the hand mixer on a low speed, or I could use a whisk. I highly recommend using a hand mixer. If you have one, your hand would get very tired using a whisk, and you will have to use a whisk for a later step. So we're going to get this egg and sugar mixture so that it's pale and thick. So you can see this is a nice pale yellow color, and that'll be ready when our milk mixture is hot enough. So now I'm going to add my cream, milk, sugar, and salt to a medium saucepan. And while it's currently sitting on the burner is off, so it's not on heat. And I'm going to start by pouring, since I'm not measuring I don't need to measure the whipping cream, it's already the right amount. But it's really thick and it likes to stick to the container. So just to kind of rinse it out a little, I'm going to pour a little bit of the milk into the whipping cream container and shake that around just to help rinse out and make sure I get all of that whipping cream into the recipe. So then we're going to add the rest of our milk. Notice how that clings to the side of the cup. So we want our rubber scraper to get all of that into our recipe. And then we want to add our sugar and our salt. And we're ready to put it on a medium-low heat. Medium-low is 2 or 3 or 4. Low would be 1 or 2. Medium-low would be 3 or 4. And for this step, I'm going to use a silicone whisk, not a metal whisk. I also like this whisk because of the way it's set up. It really makes good contact with the bottom of the pan to help prevent my mixture from burning. So I'm going to bring this just to a boil. Once I start to see those bubbles, I'm going to turn it off and move it off of the heat, and then we'll be ready for the next step. So as I stir my milk mixture, I want to mention that I chose the silicone coated whisk because I have a non-stick pan. A metal whisk should not go in a non-stick pan. It should only go in a pan without a non-stick coating. If you did not have a silicone or a plastic whisk that was heat safe, then you could use a wooden spoon for this step. But a regular metal whisk can go in a pan without a non-stick surface, and you can use a silicone whisk in a pan that is coated with non-stick. So I stir this because milk can burn easily, and we don't want that to happen. That would not add a good flavor to our ice cream. And our base of our ice cream is made in a very similar manner to a creme anglaise sauce. So it's not going to be as thick as a custard or a pudding, but the steps are very similar. After about 20 or 25 minutes, I finally got some bubbles that are coming to the surface from the bottom of the pan. They're just small, but my milk and cream mixture is just about to boil. So I'm going to turn off the burner and move the pan off the heat to get ready for the next step. So now that my mixture was just about to boil, I'm going to temper my eggs. And I'm going to do that by adding about 1/3 of the liquid, the hot liquid, into those beaten egg yolks with sugar. And I'm starting out with this very slowly, adding just a little bit at a time, whisking that in. As more is added, I can add it more quickly. So the second ladle, I won't have to drizzle quite as slowly. But I want to warm the eggs up without cooking them. That's what I do with tempering. Warm them up without cooking them so that the proteins are available to thicken our ice cream mixture rather than bind up into a cooked egg. Plus, cooked bits of scrambled egg is not a nice thing to have in your vanilla ice cream. So we're going to do about 1/3 of this. And we're going to give a good whisking. And then we're going to do another 1/3. Again, just kind of drizzling it in, whisking the entire time. If you had more than one person available to help with this or to make this, you could have one person drizzle the milk mixture in and one person do the whisking. That'd be a little bit easier. If I had 2 people available, I'd also start heating my cream mixture, my milk and cream mixture, while somebody else beat the eggs and sugar together, egg yolks and sugar. But since I was just one, I wanted to make sure those egg yolks and sugar were ready as soon as the milk was at the right temperature, and that's why I beat that first. So I'm going to do one more ladle. And then a little bit of whisking, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now I'm going to return the mixture to the saucepan, and I'm going to stir that in with a wooden spoon. And that's why I picked this particular measuring cup to be my mixing bowl, because that nice pour spout made it really easy to transfer this back into the pan. And then I'm going to stir this constantly with a wooden spoon over a low or a medium-low heat. Low would be 1 or 2, medium-low would be 3 or 4. So I'm going to stir this with my wooden spoon constantly over the medium-low heat so that I don't overcook my yolks. And this should only take me a few minutes until it thickens just a little and coats the back of the spoon. So if I look at the back of my wooden spoon, it just runs right off. So I want it to kind of stay there just a little, and then I'll know it's ready to go to the mesh strainer step. So now you can see after a few minutes, the mixture is a little bit thicker. When we look at the back of the spoon, it's not quite as see-through. If we take our rubber scraper and do a line down, it doesn't run immediately back. So that line stays. So we're going to go ahead and turn our heat off and move this over to run it through a fine mesh sieve. So here we have our fine mesh strainer set up over our storage container. And we're just going to carefully pour our ice cream base through there. And we want to scrape the pan to make sure we get everything into the mixture. And that'll catch any lumps that formed. And then now that it's off of the heat, we can add our vanilla. And just stir that in so that it's throughout the mixture. And we're going to place this in, we're going to let this cool just slightly, but then we're going to place it in the refrigerator. It has to chill for 1 to 2 hours, but even better if you can let it chill overnight. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give it overnight to chill. Now that our ice cream base has had overnight to chill, we're going to set up our ice cream churner, or ice cream maker. This is a freezer bowl. It has a liquid that freezes solid, goes in the freezer at least overnight. So we're going to set that on. This is the dasher. Okay, we're going to put that point down. There's a little groove in the bottom that the dasher goes into, sets into. And then we're going to put the lid on and lock it in place. Now for this particular ice cream maker, we have to start the ice cream maker and then add the ingredients. So we're going to go ahead and turn that on. And then we're going to pour our ice cream base in. Just using a rubber scraper to make sure I get everything in there. then as this churns, the ice cream will become more solid, and when it's ready, when it's finished, it'll have a soft serve consistency. Now, if we were to take it and put it in the freezer for any length of time, it would begin to have a consistency of a more traditional frozen ice cream that you could pick up at any ice cream parlor or grocery store. So we're going to continue to let this go. It's going to take about 20 minutes. You can see it's already starting to get a little solid in some areas. Now our ice cream has finished churning. You can see it's reached a nice soft serve consistency. And again, if we put this in a freezer for a few hours or overnight, it would begin to have a more traditional texture. Here's our delicious dish of vanilla ice cream, scooped up, simple perfection.